Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Vladimir Putin has predicted Russia will grow stronger after a landslide win in the country's election, making him set to become the longest-serving Russian leader since Catherine the Great. Mr. Putin received applause and cheers from supporters as he claimed victory and a fifth term in power. His victory speech oozed the confidence of a leader who's already been in power for a quarter of a century. In truth, no credible opposition candidate was allowed to stand. Supporters of the dead Putin critic Alexei Navalny did stage symbolic protests. Their Noon Against Putin initiative meant that long queues of voters formed at midday in Russian cities, including Moscow and St. Petersburg, while there were also attacks on voting booths by protesters. But it was never going to have any impact on the result.
It is illegal in Russia to express your opinions freely, to organize, and to demonstrate. And so Alexei Navalny, before he was killed by the Putin regime, created this form of protest in which voters could go and register their concerns about the Putin regime by standing in line all at the same time. And it's clear that many individuals went there to say no to Putin, to say yes to peace in Ukraine, and to state their desire to have a free Russia in the future. And of course, this is modest and symbolic. It's not going to change the election outcome.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will press on with the military campaign against Hamas in Gaza, where aid agencies say famine is looming, while ceasefire talks were set to resume. Netanyahu told a cabinet meeting that Israel would push into Rafah, the last relatively safe place in the tiny, crowded Gaza enclave. This is despite calls from across the international community for Israel to resist an assault on the city.
I think the consequences of a ground operation in Rafah in the current circumstances would be catastrophic for the people of Gaza, for the Palestinians. It would be catastrophic for the humanitarian situation. It would be catastrophic all around. We very much hope that all of this can be avoided.
Hundreds of people in Cuba's second largest city, Santiago, have staged a rare public protest over chronic power blackouts and food shortages. The island is facing its worst economic crisis for 3 decades, with large parts of Cuba being left without power for more than 14 hours a day. Videos on social media show people chanting power and food. Its president blames the situation on US sanctions, but critics say it's down to government mismanagement. North Korea has fired short-range ballistic missiles into the sea for the first time in 2 months. South Korea's military said several short-range missiles flew about 300 kilometers after being fired from Pyongyang, the North's capital, landing off the east coast. It condemned the launches as a clear provocation and said it was sharing information on them with the United States and Japan. It comes as the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Seoul for a conference hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol on advancing democracy. A law firm for taxi operators and drivers in Australia says Uber has agreed to pay $271.8 million in a lawsuit. Morris Blackburn lawyers filed the class action on behalf of over 8,000 taxi and hire car owners and drivers. The case alleged they lost income when the ride-hailing giant aggressively moved into the country. Emergency services say 2 people are in hospital after being attacked by a bear in a Slovakian town. A 49-year-old woman suffered an injury to her shoulder, while a 72-year-old man was treated for a gash on his head. Reports say police went on to drive the bear out of town and into a forest. Videos posted on social media showed the bear bounding along a road. And a volcano in Iceland has erupted for the 4th time since December, spewing smoke and bright orange lava into the sky. In a video shot from a Coast Guard helicopter, fountains of molten rock soared from a long fissure in the ground, and lava spread rapidly to each side. Authorities had warned for weeks that an eruption was imminent on the peninsula just south of Iceland's capital, Reykjavik. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.